All right, hey, good morning. It's Thursday, and looks like it's to be a good day, so I'm excited about that. And man, I just appreciate life. It's been good. Doing a lot of studying, mostly in a couple of arenas. Working on some stuff on the image and likeness of God. So I've just been kind of chasing our church fathers to see how they understood that. I've exhausted the scriptures from my own study, and now just kind of gleaning from others. And so we're doing that, and then just been delving back into the aspect of proof and for the existence of God from a secular perspective, not using the scriptures. And so there's about 5 different avenues in which we do that. And so I'm just kind of studying, boning up on those things. We are in a post-Christian society, and so no longer can you just stand on the street corner and everyone believes the Bible, acknowledges the Bible, or whatever. There's the antagonists, and so um, in fairness, there's a measure of helping them do what Romans speaks of, to see God in creation and in conscience. And so anyway, just doing studies like that. But and life's good. Life's good. I got a wife fix me breakfast every morning. I appreciate that. I get 5 eggs and a piece of sausage every morning, and she's up early with me doing that. And so I'm grateful for that. And so let's jump into some truth today. Man, I don't know about you, but yesterday, just looking at this is so rich. And then to talk it out. So one of my favorite things to do is to preach, because I get to talk out what I've been studying, what I've been writing. And there's something about when you talk it out, driven by the Spirit of Christ, you learn so much as you're talking it out. And so yesterday was just one of those days, and I appreciate so much this truth. So we're in chapter 5. He's explained everything about how we are completely and utterly hopeless. That has to be the place where we start. Is to understand. People want to kind of avoid the bad news, but it's essential in the gospel that we understand that. We have to know in our state that we are in direct opposition against God, that we have before Christ. Though we have seen His creation and we have His conscience, and for many of us, we even have the privilege of just pulling the Bible out anywhere and reading it. You have all 3 of those things, and yet you have suppressed the truth, replaced it with a lie, so you become irrational in your thoughts. Man, am I bumping up against those guys all over the place these days that have forsaken all that, and now they're just irrational. That is the deconstructionist movement, who has decided that you don't just move from deconstruction to then putting it back together in a good and godly way. You move away from the clear teachings and historical doctrines that we've held. You only move to deconstruction on your way to agnosticism or atheism, and so your thoughts become irrational. That's why you begin to try and justify sin that the Scripture clearly says isn't sin, but they want you to believe that really only one verse that is dispute of that, and it's easily swept away. These are the kind of things that prevails our land these days. And so it's important that we drive home the fact that there is a standard, there is a conscience that lets us know there's a standard, and that we don't make that standard. And then we find ourselves standing beneath this great dam that's holding back the wrath of God. This is how he says it, and he knocks down every person. He knocks down the Gentile, the pagan. He knocks down the moralist, and he knocks down the Jew. He says all of us are at the same place. We all need help outside of ourselves. So then he begins to bring the glorious gospel in. We looked at that. He talks about justification. It's a gift freely given by faith. That is it, not of works. But yet it is our works that he will judge us. That's what he's going to do. He said that in chapter 1, chapter 2. But yet it is the works that are unto righteousness. We don't work for our salvation. We work because God is working His goodness in us by virtue of our faith in Him. That's where we found ourselves. And then yesterday we looked at the fact that He has given us these great and really precious truths that you and I can grab a hold of. And so what happens when I came to Christ? What is that? When I put my faith in Christ and my heart was transformed from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light, there are certain things that were also settled at that time. And so the first one we saw was that chapter 5, verse 1, therefore having been justified by faith, not of works, not of anything else, I have been made right by virtue of Christ and his sacrifice, and I believe by faith, right? I believe that he did that. Therefore, God sees me as justified. That is, as though I have never sinned. I stand perfect and complete in him. He sees me as perfect. You cannot overstate what that means. That means that I have perfect relationship with Christ. That means I am at peace with God. That's what we looked at yesterday. I have peace with God. God's not mad at me. God's not warring against me. I am no longer fighting against God. I am now lining myself up and in sync with him, that I am a dirty, rotten scoundrel who needed grace and who needed Christ to redeem me from this pit. And he has done that. Therefore, I am at peace with God. That means that we're not warring. We're on the same team. He's now the Lord of my life, and I am his forever servant. And in that role, it moves to a sense of just a friendship. And that's where we are. And so I have peace with God. I stand in his grace. That is all we have. But his grace lavished upon us, I stand in that. That means everywhere I turn, the grace of God is with me. I stand in it. I'm swimming in it. I'm breathing it in. Everything I touch in this area is filled with his grace. It is what it is. I stand in grace. And then he says that we have this, and we celebrate in hope the glory of God. God built you and me for glory. We were built in the image and likeness of God, which meant that the image is the icon of God, right? That I represent him. Likeness means that I totally reflect who he is. Adam did that before the fall. He perfectly reflected. He was like that mirror that just reflected him. And then the fall happened, and though we still are, even unsaved man is in the image and likeness of God. There are glimpses of God you see in man. Those qualities that are there even after the fall, and then you come to Christ, and now glory is being worked and revealed in us, right? And that's what's going on. And so we begin to behold his glory, not like looking at it, though that is true, but we also become his glory, right? We are made in his likeness, and so this is where we find ourselves. I have complete hope of glory. And so that is such a powerful thing. Then he says this, and not only the hope of glory, this is powerful, so listen to this, we also celebrate in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope, and hope does not disappoint. That's as far as we're going to get, I think, today, but this is what we're going to look at. Listen. So as a Christ follower, my life is no longer in this chaotic mode where it just feels like nothing randomly makes sense. We know now as believers, Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. That everything that comes into my life, sifted through the hands of God, he is weaving together for my good. This is how we face trials. James says it the same way. Consider joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let that endurance have its perfect result, or complete result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Perfect and complete means completely holy. This is the whole point of where he's going. Though we will ultimately be glorified at death, we're moving to glory now. We are moving away from the old man. We are moving away from the sin and the choices that we made and the irrational thoughts. And this is what he's saying we're going to. When we are justified, it sets in motion a whole nother set of variables that are brought into my life. One, I'm at peace with God. I no longer have to, God's not warring against me. And so that's important. I stand in his grace. He's not got the book out of law and he's like, you missed it there. He's not doing that. I stand in grace. And then I also have this hope that he is working on me, that I will look ever more like him. Because that's where our heart cry is. That's what we were before the fall. It is what even fallen man has this innate desire to do, just is unconscious of that. And so this is where we are. And so what is he saying here? He's saying, listen, my troubles drive me forward. This is what's going on. My troubles drive me forward. They prove me. This is what it is, right? They prove me. When we have been tested, we shall come forth as gold. That whole concept there is that you would take a piece of gold and it would be in its raw form, and there's dross and other things in it. You would boil that dross or that gold, and all the impurities would begin to surface. You would skim that off, and you would do that until you came up with it was nothing but pure gold. And this is exactly what God is doing to us. Trials are simply the heat that exposes the weaknesses in our life and in our faith, and God clears them out, and we become purified. This is the whole deal of what happens. I have a present certainty of this hope. Peter actually says the same thing in 1 Peter 1. Listen to this. He says, in this you greatly rejoice, even though now, for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold, which perishes though tested by fire, may be found to result in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And though you have not seen him, you love him. And though you do not see him now, you believe him, and you greatly rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, obtaining as the outcome of your faith the salvation of your souls. So what he's saying here is, listen, here's what happens. Trials come my way. Something terrible happens. It's somebody, mean to me. I've just got some bad news about cancer. I just had a wreck. Whatever those things are, right? Whatever trial comes our way. James says various trials. So they come in little polka dots. That's what that word various means. It literally means polka, like as in polka dots. And so they come in all different sizes and shapes. Trials do, right? Some are little, some are big. You stump your toe. Hey, that may not be a trial to somebody who's dying of cancer, but it's a trial to you, isn't it? It hurts. And so all of these little trials and big trials that come, they create a perseverance, right? That we stay under. I don't just go, oh, God, well, if God loved me, he wouldn't let that happen. That we don't do those things anymore. We are certain that he loves us. We are certain that we have peace with him. We are certain that I stand in his grace, and he is a forgiving and a gracious God. So when these trials come, I just bear up under it. I watched my mom do this the last season of her life with some of her back troubles and everything else. Whenever anything went on, she would always look at us and she would say, this too shall pass, right? It's just like, hey, it's just a thing. She was bearing up underneath that. That's what was going on. That's what it means to persevere, hupomone, to endure, to carry the cross. That's what Jesus did. He endured the cross. That is, he carried the burden and weight of that cross. He persevered. That was his trial. Knowing for the joy set before him, what did he do? He endured the cross. So it's the same thing that you and me are doing. Though our trials may not be because we're being persecuted or because of our godliness, it's just the normal things of life. We don't let our focus get off of the area and the trail in which we're going, and so we just persevere. We bear up under. We know this. No one can steal our joy. No one can steal my hope either, right? And so we just buck up. We just go, okay, hey, it's just a thing. And we just plod along, right? Perseverance, when we do that, when we don't whine and complain about the difficulties of life, right? We have lots to think about, nothing to worry about, nothing to fear. And so we just walk through this life. Difficulties come, we handle them. The bad we shrug off, we keep going. The good we appreciate. When we find relief, we rejoice. But we still rejoice in everything else because we know that difficulties are actually removing the impurities of our life so that we look more like God. And I'm telling you, you and me are much more peaceful. We're better off. We're much more joyful when we look like God. When we start trying to fight like the world does, and we start trying to do that, we never experience the peace and presence and power of God in that fight. Now, so we persevere, and what happens? It proves our character, right? It proves that we're the real deal. Listen, if I drop what I think is gold into boiling water, and begin to try and let the dross melt away from it in extreme heat, I could end up with nothing because it was fool's gold. But here's what's going on with us. It's proven character, because what happens is I don't get weaker in my trials. I find that the garbage in my life that I've allowed to be there is thrown off, and I'm actually getting better, right? It's the same thing that happens when you're working out and all of that and trying to lose weight. So you're watching all this stuff, you're going through these trials, your muscles are working against themselves because of weight and everything you're doing, and you realize what's happening is that your strength is proving that this stuff is working, and all of the fat and all of the muscles getting larger, and the fat is shrinking, and what's happening? Your body's reshaping itself. This is the idea spiritually behind the trials in our life. These resistances that come in force us to push against it, force us to endure it, and that resistance of enduring these trials is removing all the other stuff that we've clung to. And we find that our faith is growing, and so that we spiritually are becoming stronger, the person that we're meant to be. Just in the same sense of what happens when you work out, physically you do. And then he says this proven character, he says, gives us this hope, right? Let me get back to Romans 5. And this proven character, hope. And hope never disappoints. The certainty that I am going to be who God has called me to be never disappoints. This is where it is. This is where Stephen was ultimately when he was being persecuted for his faith, preaching the gospel of Christ, and they're throwing stones at him. He sees the heavens scrolled back, and he says, "I see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Father." And he too says, "Father, forgive them." Right? This is the concept. This is what's going on. He's allowing that trial only to really enhance who he is and who God had called him to be. We can find this deal of trials everywhere, and I'm not going to wander through all of the passages. I just think a couple of them would be helpful. Romans 8, he says, and if children, verse 17, and if children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we also may be glorified with him. For I consider the present sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed in us. Our trials give us an opportunity for his glory, for the glory that we were created to walk in begins to be seen in our life. It's how we know it. It's how we know it. And you can't escape that. It's everywhere. It's in Romans chapter 9. Paul talks about it greatly through this whole book. What if God, although willing to demonstrate his wrath and to make his power known, endured with great patience objects of wrath prepared for destruction? And he did so to make known the riches of his glory upon objects of mercy, which he prepared beforehand for glory. You know what he's saying? He's saying, what if I took Randy? What if I took you? And instead of just blasting you with my grace, I endured with great patience your obstinance, your, all of that. And I did so, God says, to make known the riches of my glory upon the objects that I'm demonstrating mercy to by not letting the wrath fall on you now. And he did that because I prepared you beforehand that you would for glory, right? And so this is what's going on. This is what God is doing. I have the capacity to be perfected. That's what these trials do. They show that I have the capacity to be perfected. This is what we want. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Christ in me, the hope of glory, is when all the junk is moved. That's what you should see. My joy, my peace, my hope. It can't be taken away. None of that can. 1 Thessalonians 2:12, Paul says, walk worthy of God who called you to his kingdom and his glory, to wear his glory, right? So we walk worthy of this. Trials come our way, we're worthy walkers. I'm not going to whine and complain like the world does, right? Do all things without grumbling and complaining. He may shine his lights amidst of a wicked and perverse generation, Paul told the Philippians, right? This is what that looks like. Peter says he is a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. And then Paul says it like this: these momentary light afflictions are producing in them an eternal weight of glory, right? Every trial clears out a little more of the old man till all that's left is God's glory. This is what God is doing as justified people. The difficulties we see them differently than the world does. We know that it's God weaving in his glory in us and removing this stuff that prevents us from shining bright. That's the great truth of what the gospel of Christ does to a man and a woman. Lord bless you guys. Can't wait to keep going through this. We talk about love tomorrow. It's powerful. Can't wait to see you then.